Hi, I'm Andrew McCrae. Welcome to our farm and ranch in northwest Missouri. My great-great-grandfather settled here in 1910, and I'm the fifth generation to grow crops and livestock here. As a farmer myself, I know the highs and lows of this life, the issues we confront every day, some new, some as old as farming itself. This show is a place to talk with farmers and others in the ag industry about topics that mean something to us, topics that can improve the present and future of our operations. This is Farming the Countryside. Dave Hula joins me, Charles City, Virginia, and we're going to talk about his farm and about a new show. In fact, Dave, let's just start there. You and Randy Dowdy, you talk about two guys fairly well known out there in farming. Talk about what you guys are doing on the podcast network, so to speak.
Yeah, well, Andrew, I'm a guy, I'm not a social media person, so I don't hardly ever listen to podcasts. And we had a chance to partner with Farm Journal and thought it was a great chance. And it's called Breaking Barriers with R&D. So I guess for Randy and David, I don't know why they didn't do D and H for Dowdy and Hula, but they did Randy and David. So it's the cool thing about it is, it's broke up into a couple segments. We talk about, like we're going to do today, what's going on in Virginia. We talk about what's going on in Georgia, or Dowdy Farm, some in Michigan now, or what's going on across the country. And then we either do a producer highlight or we talk with some kind of vendor of some sort to talk about things that a farmer could be doing. We film it on a Tuesday and it's aired on Friday, every other week. So it's timely information that growers can impact their crop this year. So that's what we're excited about, reaching more growers.
Well, you've got great information. I know you've been sharing it with, growers over the years in a variety of ways, but now you have a consistent way to share it, I guess. Is that right?
That's exactly right. And then, we also work with Chip Flory on AgriTalk. We're there every other week with him, and the media side with Farm Journal. So what better platform to work with when you're thinking about farmers and agriculture is Farm Journal, that whole network.
Right, right. Well, for those that don't know, why don't you describe where you farm and kind of what you farm? Because you're out there in Virginia in some pretty fertile ground.
Well, I wouldn't say fertile as compared to some of the stuff in the Midwest, but we're a fine sandy loam soil. Farm on the north banks of the James River, and when you think James River, eventually you're going to think downstream, and there's Jamestown where it all started. We farm what's called mainland farms, and we're quite proud of that. The county owns it, and it was first cultivated in 1609 from the settlers from Western civilization, and it has been farmed every year since then. So when you think of history and agriculture, that's where it kind of started in the U.S. And it's the second place we recorded 300 bushel dryland corn, and it's exciting. Crops, we grow corn, obviously we grow soybeans, and we grow small grains or cereals. Being in the seed business, so we got a lot of different varieties, a lot of different hybrids. So we're deep into it. And because of Chesapeake Bay, Andrew, we're worried about water quality. We follow a lot of stewardship plans, a lot of conservation plans, from no tillage to strip tilling to split and fertilizer. And the cool thing about the Chesapeake Bay program, it forced growers to be more efficient. Well, it also allowed us to be a lot more economical with their nutrients. And what better time to be efficient and economical is in a year like 2025 where inputs are tight. So you got to watch where every dollar is spent.
We just had a guest on about a month ago that was farming in Maryland and still had drainage in the Chesapeake. And his comment, and I'm betting you're going to back this up, is that, yeah, we have more regulations, but it helped us become better farmers and in a sense, be more economical in what we're doing. Is that what you would assess as well?
Yeah, I would agree. And a lot of farmers, I started farming when I got out of school, and I just wanted to make sure that's what I wanted to do all my life. So I left the farm because my late dad and late uncle both did the same thing. I left the farm and started working for this Chesapeake Bay program in the nutrient management arena. And I learned from a lot of great growers, Ronnie Russell there in Middlesex County, and the Millses, and just a lot of growers that are aggressive. high yielders, as well as just focus on management. And we learned things from that, and it did make us better farmers. You know, we just can't afford to spend, and we got to watch our inputs. And when you do that, and then the other thing that allowed it for us to do is when we were spending their dollars, we were really focusing on how it was going to impact the crop. So that allowed us to be not only more efficient, but we were gaining more bushels.
Right. Well, I know this may be hard to answer because I know it'd be somewhat broad, but when you think about farmers in the Midwest, like myself, we grow corn and soybeans. Based on what you deal with, what would you tell us? Hey, you guys need to think more about this because we deal with it all the time and you're wasting money or you're not focused. What would you tell me I need to do?
Well, the first thing, and I know it's really easy. I don't know if you're an anhydrous guy, but putting out fertilizer in the fall or winter time and expect it to all be there for the crop in the next season. To me, that's ludicrous because we're a fine sandy loam. You deal with a lot higher CEC soils than we do. Ours go from 1.7 to 6.7. That's our highest. So a lot of sand. That would be the first thing I'd look at. And the other thing that we have learned is cover crops. I know it's hard for people. Y'all want to plant black and, you want things to warm up, but cover crops add so much value to the whole system where you got biology there, you're holding nutrients and then they're released later. And there are things that you can do to still plant black, strip tilling, we run a soil warrior from environmental tillage systems. A guy could have cover crop, run a strip till and still plant back and still have the full benefits of the cover crop. So those would be two quick things I could say, Andrew, and I'm sure there's others, but nobody wants to hear things that they're doing wrong. They want to hear things they're doing right.
Yeah, I know, but we always want to try to improve. So let me go back over to the anhydrous because so many acres have anhydrous. And I realize, yeah, the soil is different. So that makes some things. We can use stabilizer and so forth. But what would you say then is the optimal way to do that? I'm guessing in furrow is going to be part of it, but a lot of people don't have the in furrow. What would you say is the way to get my hands around it?
Well, I mean, I get growers. When they want to start planting corn, all they want to do is fill the planter with seed. And the only time they want to stop is to relieve themselves to go to the bathroom or get something to eat and then fill the planter back up and go. So when you start talking about fertilizers and adding more things to the planter, but if they were to really do it and see the benefits to it, hey, if a farmer can see where he's going to make more money, he probably would be inclined to slow things down a little bit. Me personally, Andrew, I'm not a big fan of fertilizer in the furrow. That's with the seed. I'm more about let's put it to the side of the row. Or, I'm not saying that's the only way. We can strip till, we can knife fertilizer in or do like the soil warrior and mix it up in a zone. But all these things is just to make the plant have the nutrients close to the roots when it needs it. And that just makes the plant, I don't want to say lazy, but efficient capturing those nutrients.
The extra time, and I'll put in quotes, the extra time that you have to fill up is worth it then in your mind by far.
Well, you get out there and I know y'all run a bunch. I don't know what size planter or operation you have, Andrew, but there's a lot of 24 row, 36 rows, DBs or whatever. We use a 16 row John Deere 1770, 2013 model. We did put the ExactEmerge, we did the performance upgrade package on the planter 4 years ago. And that allows us to plant faster when conditions are good. But for us, a long day, everybody's days are different. What is long? But we'll average 150 acres a day and we'll put 26 and a half gallons of starter out and we'll put 5 gallons in furrow out. Just to give you an idea what a day could be like, a good day, the last day we planted, which was on a Saturday, just before a rain event, we planted 184 acres that day, and we did a 45 variety hybrid trial, all in the same day. So people do what people want to do, and if it's a passion or if it's a way that they can generate revenue, they'll put a system in place to do that.
Yeah, no, that's right. So your ground, were we talking fairly flat ground? You mentioned had the sand, but also flat.
Yeah, I mean, we do have a couple highly erodible fields now. Nothing like they have out in Iowa, where they're really rolling. But we do have some slope, it doesn't take a whole lot of slope for a sandy field to have some erosion. So we have a few highly erodible fields, but most of it's river bottom ground. But when I say river bottom, it's not going to flood. If it floods air soil, it is a biblical flood, and people are going to be looking for an ark. So we're high enough. When I say river bottom, it's millions of years where the old riverbeds used to be.
Sure, sure. Well, and where we farm, everything has to be terraced, or for the most part, it does. So lots of roll to those hills and lots of terraces, so that everybody has their limits and their pluses and the challenges, I suppose, to where they farm, don't they?
Yeah, I mean everybody. You go to the Midwest, they got obstacles. I mean, they deal with either weather, being cold, wind. Everybody has some struggles, but most growers say if you had a chance to farm anywhere on the planet, where would you farm? Most of them would stay where they are right now because they understand their soil, and that's the way I am. I would enjoy, and I've had fun doing the Total Acre event with growers across the country with Randy and helping them overcome some of the obstacles and sharing some light. Because I'm in Virginia working with a guy in Iowa, Illinois, Dakotas, who knows, and it's cool to see their struggles and to overcome them. Patience, I think a lot of times we just need patience.
Let's talk about some of the practices you use. You mentioned cover crops earlier. So, is there a tried and true method that you like to use as far as what you plant and when you plant in the fall?
Yeah, well, all right. There are cover crop programs out there. I mean, we get cost share to help do that. But if you're planting a crop, you got to treat it like a crop. Oftentimes people look at a cover crop, hey, we're just going to broadcast or get an airplane, fly it on, and then expect it to do wonderful things. When we're doing a cover crop, we're seeding it just like we would a cereal crop. I prefer oats as a cover crop for several reasons. They're easy to kill. And then number two, there's a disease cycle called take all that infects small grain, and it infects wheat, barley, and rye. They're a host for it. Oats will break that host cycle. We've tried the tillage radish. They're great. I mean, they do a good job. We did 300 and some acres at the Western farm. They oftentimes die when it gets really cold. It was a year that it was warm all winter. They grew. We had tubers about 2 foot above ground. I mean, the wind, some of them were just breaking over. When we chemically killed them, it smelled like a propane leak. So, the landowner said, that was great to see, but it sure has got a smell. Well, I don't need something to fall on my head. That's like, okay, good project. Let's not do that again. Different this year. I'm because of the seed business, we don't want to plant vetches, but we did try some Austrian winter peas. They look tremendous. They say that they'll put off 150 some pounds of nitrogen. We were thinking about killing them, but now we're thinking about harvesting them. So hadn't decided, and beans are going to be there rather than corn. So I would say if a grower is going to look at cover crops, treat it like a real crop, plant it the way accordingly you would plant small grain or vetch or tillage radish. Plant it, manage it. Sometimes putting just a hint of fertilizer gives it a good start so you get a good root system, and then just kill it. So whether you kill it just before you plant or after you plant, but just there are advantages because there's biology around those roots. When it dies, you got your new crop that you're raising for grain. Biology just moves right to those roots. So, and then it holds the world together, whether it's dust or rain or erosion.
I'm sure you hear this with different farmers that you work with, especially as you move into further northern climates. You may have a little bit more of a time window. So, what do you say? Just, okay, it doesn't matter. You just got to go in and get it done. And that's just the way it is. Don't give me this excuse of I don't have time and I don't have enough growing season.
Yeah. Well, I'm assuming you're talking about cover crops now too.
Right. Cover crops. Right. Getting them established
Yeah.
in the fall after you harvest.
Well,
Yes.
so yeah, if one of the things that I oftentimes like to share with growers, you can't harvest all your crop at one time. We do a really good job planting their spring crops, and we can plant them in a week, 10-day, 2-week window. But can you harvest it all in that window? No, we can't. It takes us weeks and weeks and months to harvest it. So maybe in a rotational cycle, pick some of your ground that you harvest first and say, all right, we're going to put cover crops on this. So the first crop that comes out, whether it's the shortest season corn or your soy, plant a cover crop behind that. And then maybe next year you have a different spot that's going to be your first. So just to try it. And I'm not saying growers need to go do it on every acre. Try it, see if it fits their program. And if it does, then they can expand it on more. And if you see an advantage to it and it ROIs makes you more money, I think growers going to, kind of gravitate towards it.
What are you using to seed those cover crops usually then? What
kind of we got a John Deere air seeder with a commodity cart. So a 1890 and a 1910 40-foot air drill. So we can cover a lot of acres in a day. And, every acre does not get cover crop. Wherever we have our small grain seed production, I can't do it because we got to rotate it and keep it clean. So those acres don't, but wherever we have ground that's just corn and soy, we will put cover crops there.
We opened up and you mentioned that things are tighter, of course, for a lot of growers. There's not as much margin there. I'm just curious, has that changed anything that you do on the front end? Or do you say, no, you need to spend the money because you've always got to grow the crop? And so in a sense, it doesn't matter what that price at the end is.
Well, I don't think when we have a depressed grain market, we need more bushels. And then what does that do? That doesn't help the market, but we need more bushels on there. And unfortunately, somebody's going to have a bad crop, whether it's here in the U.S. or somewhere in South America or on this planet. Somebody's going to have an unfortunate crop. And then we got to have bushels. So growers need to know what pays, what works and what doesn't work. Now, we do a lot of trials. I don't know. I hate to say how many trials because I haven't figured it up, but I don't want to. Technology from John Deere, we just entered into monitors, and then we are able to collect that data after season, post-mortem to understand what we did. But there are certain things that we won't give up and say, hey, I know it costs me money, but we always see those returns. It's like products we put in furrow, like a relay product. Starter, we're not going to give up starter. Things we did this year to help manage costs, we went a lot of chicken litter. We see advantages to that long term, not just short term. So that's not helping my nutrient salesman one bit when I'm putting out chicken litter. But then outside of that, managing their inputs like pesticides, what fungicides are we going to use? When are we going to use them? And then, herbicides, we just can't have diseases. So we just focus on the whole bottom line portion of it.
You mentioned the trials there. So is that things that you're doing paid through some of the seed work you're doing, or is there a combination, or how do you decide what I want to test and how I collect the data?
Well, part of Total Acre, as a member, you get a chance. There's a lot of trials that the companies want to do. Redox being one. There's just a lot of companies out there that say, hey, we want to compare air product to your standard, and they'll pay. I mean, growers can generate revenue. Then there will be things that, hey, I've gone to the Commodity Classic. I want to see something. Now, of course, a lot of folks would probably want to give us product to try, but the last thing I want to see is, hey, Dave Hula, Renwood Farms is trying this product. I don't know if it works or not, but that almost comes off as an endorsement. So I'll call my nutrient guy, say, hey, I want a little bit of this. Let me just ship me some, let me buy it, and then we'll try it. Whether it's biologicals in furrow products or, fungicides in furrow or probiotics, just a whole list of things. But I'm always looking for that. What people ask me, what's that silver bullet you're doing? I'm looking for that silver bullet. There is no such thing, but it's a system. But there are certain things that when Andrew, when you get to a yield barrier, and then all of a sudden, let's say you find whatever's holding you back, then you might see a 20, 25, 27 bushel yield response to that one limiting factor. Well, then all you've done is create another ceiling tile that you got to punch through. So the silver bullet is identifying what's holding you back and then punching through it. And then you just push that ceiling tile higher. And, so I'm like every other grower. What new Pioneer hybrids out there that's going to give me these extra bushels?
You mentioned a couple of things there I wanted to ask you about, and just in general, if you want to talk products, you can, but biologicals, probiotics, and these types of things. I think of a class of products out there right now that have so many unknowns, and we're trying them. And is it they aren't good? Is it they are good? Is it we just don't know how to use them yet? How are you evaluating the multitude of products that are out there that I think can do a lot of good, but how do you evaluate and what do you use?
Well, I tell my son Barley that I'm excited for the future of agriculture because the future is really what's going on below ground. Here we've been doing it fertilizer wise and tillage and then hybrids, but there's a lot of things that are coming out that are going to impact us. So as a grower, you go to a trade show, you see all these things and you get excited about it. Just pick a couple companies, evaluate them. I work a lot with ROI Biological, Cody Goins. I like the stuff that he's got. His humic acids are good. I like his products that he gives us downstream. Now, not give, he provides us. So let's break this away. I don't get stuff free. And then there's another company, Genesis Ag. That's like my other biological company. So we're evaluating other ones, but pick a couple, try them. Don't try a lot of acres. Just try a few acres with and without, and then let the yield monitor tell you. I like to go out there, pull tissue samples just to get a better understanding. But the advantages are just phosphorus, nitrogen efficiency. Now we're talking about potash, probiotics, keeping the crop disease free, and insect free. So a lot of these things, there is excitement. I don't have all the answers. I'm trying to figure it out myself.
I feel like I'm the same way, and I've tried out some of these products, and I can see differences. And it isn't always yield monitor, but it could be savings on other types of products. And sometimes they don't show up until you have that bad year, that drought year. Any things that you're seeing that do they work every year? Is it certain years? Because I think there's so much there we just don't know yet.
Yeah, well, there are some things that we do in furrow that it's more going to help when you have that cool, wet spring. Well, it's like insurance. How many times do we buy insurance? We write that check and we hope we never claim on it. Well, some of these products we're putting out in furrow to give us that protection. And then let's say it was like this year, we just had a great spring. I mean, it quit raining. We planted, we had temperatures, corn's coming up 6-7 days. Everything's going well. All that money we spent in furrow, we'll see some benefit, but it's not the results that we would have seen if it was a cool, wet spring. So I'm not one to say this year it didn't work, so cut it out. You got to look, you got to evaluate things for multiple years. If it makes good walking sense and one year it doesn't work, try the second year and see if it does work. If it doesn't work 2 years, pull it out of your system. But I am a believer, like you just said, Andrew. You got to try some things, and you got to evaluate whether it worked on that year or another year.
I know we would have way too much that we couldn't get to, but I do want to give you a chance here to wind up. Anything that you would like to share that, hey, this has worked really well, or don't do this, or what have I learned in the last year that I want to share some wisdom here at the end of the show that I've learned here in the past year.
Well, I mean, I could be like a NASCAR driver and just start spitting off products. But I will say for growers, and we talked about this in our total acre meeting and on the podcast, Breaking Barriers with R&D. I think now that guys have finished planting corn and soybeans, the number one thing growers got to focus on is their planter. And that's with anybody. Really spend time, go back out there and do some post-planting process evaluations. See if things worked out well. And then, we can't do anything in furrow. So the next thing is, as you're doing, I guess the one big tidbit I would say, as you're adding fertilizer, really consider adding some humic acids in there, whether it's foliar or as we're wide dropping or easy dropping, banding their fertilizer. That would be one thing, you can try some with and without, and then manage your crop the rest of the way. Treat it like a crop, even though inputs are tough. You need bushels.
Right. Well, we'll hope we grow some bushels, and we'll hope we get a little bit of a price increase here on the back end somewhere, right?
Yeah, you and me both. Yeah, I got to improve on my marketing for sure.
David, I appreciate the time. Great conversation.
Yeah, thank you, Andrew, and all the listeners. Stay tuned for Breaking Barriers with R&D there on Farm Journal podcast.